Hey guys, welcome back to Follow Me 11B. Discussions on current events, macroeconomics, and freedom and liberty from a veteran's perspective. Today I wanted to give an update on the ongoing Russian-Ukraine war situation and pose a question. Are the ongoing de-escalation efforts in Washington, D.C. actually going to have the opposite effect? So let's go straight to a news article from Politico entitled, U.S. formally accuses Russian military of committing war crimes in the Ukraine, by Nahal Tusi and Quint Forgy from the 23rd of March, 2022. The United States on Wednesday formally accused unnamed members of Russia's armed forces of committing war crimes in Ukraine and promised to hold Moscow accountable, including through potential criminal prosecutions. Based on information currently available, the U.S. government assesses that members of Russia's forces have committed war crimes in Ukraine, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said. The exact impact of the accusation, symbolism of making the declaration, could, in theory, sap morale among Russian forces, who, by the way, have been reports that they're actually shooting themselves to be removed from the battlefield. So I'm not exactly sure if the morale, you got to sap the morale among the Russian forces, as it doesn't exactly seem super high to begin with. But moving on. People accused of war crimes can be tried in a variety of forums, such as the International Criminal Court or a special tribunal, but it's often difficult, if not impossible, to gain custody of those individuals. Still, in leveling the accusation of war crimes, Blinken did not specify Putin or anyone else. Our assessment is based on a careful review of available information from public and intelligence sources, he said. As with any alleged crime, a court of law with jurisdiction over the crime is ultimately responsible for determining criminal guilt in specific cases. The ICC has launched its own investigation into Russian actions in Ukraine, as have other entities, including the Biden administration. But, in an example of how tricky this area of international law is, the United States itself has not always recognized the authority of the ICC. Beth Van Schack, the Biden administration's ambassador at large for global criminal justice, told reporters in an appearance after Blinken's statement was released that U.S. officials will consider even domestic courts to litigate the war crimes cases. Asked if the U.S. assessment could be used to prosecute Putin, Van Schack said, I think that's a question left to a court of law that has appropriate jurisdiction over individuals involved in the conflict. Which is weird because the previous paragraph she just said, U.S. officials will consider domestic courts to litigate the war crimes cases, but now she's concerned about appropriate jurisdiction. But I digress. Still, she noted that chains of command do matter in such contexts. The doctrine of superior responsibility allows for commanders to be held responsible for acts committed by their subordinates if they're aware of those acts and they fail to either prevent them in advance or punish them after the fact, she said. Furthermore, Reuters today is reporting Dmitry Medvedev, president of Russia from 2008 to 2012. Now he's the current deputy secretary of the Russian Security Council, said the U.S. has conspired to destroy Russia as part of a, quote, primitive game, unquote, since the 1991 fall of the Soviet Union. So Medvedev said the Kremlin, first he rattled off this kind of strange list of things that accused the U.S. of doing to try to destroy the Russia since the fall of the Soviet Union. And then he said that the Kremlin would never allow the destruction of Russia and warned that if Washington did achieve its destructive aims, the world could face a, quote, big nuclear explosion, unquote. So, that said, The Biden administration has to do what I'm referring to, and what they're doing right now is what I'm referring to as chainsaw juggling. What they're doing is they're trying to get Vladimir Putin to withdraw forces and end the conflict in the Ukraine, presumably. However, what have they done to make this happen? Well, right now they have crushed the Russian economy by sharpening up the teeth of some sanctions for the average Russian person. Russia can still get many of the things it needs for its war machine through China. It can also, and I don't think that the sanctions are necessarily hurting the Russian military or Vladimir Putin himself, but it's certainly damaging their average Russian. However, that said, this is the primary action we've taken so far, and historically, this is not exactly the most effective tactic. For example, Cuba, probably the mother of all sanctions. The embargo in Cuba started in the 1960s, lasted through the 70s, through the 80s, through the 90s, through the 2000s. Sometime in the 2010s, I think it was around 2015-ish, but they were somewhat removed. So we're talking 40 plus years of sanctions, and Fidel Castro stayed in power the entire time up until when his brother had to take over. Some other honorable mentions as far as sanctions go, more recent even, Iran, at least once, maybe twice, Syria, Venezuela, and at last check, I believe the leadership in all those countries is still the same. So now that we've instilled sanctions as our primary tactic on Russia, I would not expect that there would be a leadership change anytime soon, just based on history. What is our other tactic? Well, our other tactic is, in my opinion, the best tactic would be to negotiate a way out of this for Vladimir Putin to save face. However, this is where the chainsaw juggling comes in. When you're trying to negotiate with someone, it's probably not best to slap them across the face first or threaten them. Most ambassadors and diplomats probably already know this. So it might not have been the smartest thing for Anthony Blinken to announce that, what do you say, the unnamed members of Russia's armed forces have been committing war crimes. And even worse, last week, when asked, I believe it was one day before St. Patrick's Day, Joe Biden, when asked if Vladimir Putin was a war criminal, Joe Biden said, well, yes, Vladimir Putin is a war criminal, which he may well be. However, Mr. President, if you're watching, probably not the best idea to say that out loud and in public when you want him to still do something for you. Maybe save that kind of rhetoric till after you get him to do it. In my opinion, though, the best opportunity to end the conflict quickly and easily as possible is to give Vladimir Putin a chance to save face by giving up that land bridge in the Donbass region. The Donbass region in southeast Ukraine, sort of quasi-captured by Russia already, but it's been disputed for a while. Crimea, since 2014, when Russia annexed it, it's been part of Russia again. So they've wanted to link these two with a land bridge for a long time. Now they've actually captured that land in this invasion over the last several weeks. So if Ukraine is willing to swallow that bitter pill and give up the landmass and give up the Donbass, Vladimir Putin can march most of his forces back to Russia and head held high and announce to the Russian people and the upper levels of his military and government that they won. You can call it a loss, but Vladimir Putin would be able to call that a victory, even if it is not really a victory. lost at last count, according to the AP, 7 to 15,000 troops. So that's a steep price to pay to capture a land bridge. But if you're looking at this from Vladimir Putin's perspective, he wants to remain in power. He wants to not be deposed by another Russian figure or worse in Russia. So, looking at it from his perspective, he could save face by having that negotiated. But it's harder to negotiate when your Secretary of State and you, as the President of the United States, are calling him a war criminal who could be brought up on potential criminal prosecution. So that's kind of cutting off some of Vladimir Putin's options, in my opinion. The other option for Vladimir Putin would be all-out victory in Ukraine, which at this point, based on how his military has been performing up to this point, and it's springtime now, and other reports are that, even him moving across the country, if he were able to do that and capturing some of these other cities, he's not really able to right now. His tanks are being stuck in the mud because, he can't use the roads that have been mined by Ukrainian forces. So he's going off-road with his tanks, which they're designed to do. However, it's springtime now and it's muddy, so a lot of tanks are throwing track and getting stuck. That said, the final possibility is what Dmitry Medvedev was talking about, which we definitely don't want, a nuclear deployment. So, in my opinion, the quickest, easiest way to end the conflict is with a negotiated withdrawal and Putin being able to keep that land bridge to the Donbass from Crimea. Just a matter of if the Ukrainians are able to swallow that bitter pill, and if the Biden administration is able to get out of its own way without, as well-deserved as it is, you probably shouldn't insult Vladimir Putin when you're trying to get him to do something for you that you want him to do. That said, Joe Biden did leave today, at long last, on day 28 of the conflict, to go to visit with his NATO allies and discuss their next move. And on the way to Marine One, he was quoted as saying, I got to make sure I get this right, "All I have to say, I'm going to say when I get there," unquote. Well, now we can all rest easy. He will be there on the 24th and the 25th. This is day 28 of the conflict, moving into day 29. And I believe that the best chance for this chainsaw juggling to not result in a severed arm is to negotiate a settlement where the land bridge is kept. And the only way we can do that, though, is if the Biden administration does not step on its own toes while they're trying to do that by, announcing that they're going to cut off some of the options for Vladimir Putin and company, such as, we're going to prosecute you. Once you leave the country, then we're going to prosecute you as a war criminal. Probably not the best way to get him to do something that they want him to do. But I would love to hear your opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. So please put your comments below in the video. Subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to visit us, like us, subscribe, follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Follow Me 11B, and at The Real Follow Me 11B on Instagram. And we will see you all on the next video.